My name is Isabella Hayes, and at 34 I never expected to be publicly executed in my professional life. 5 years at StartPoint Technologies, building it from scrappy startup to acquisition target, only to have Victoria Palmer, our snake of a COO, destroy it all with 9 cruel words. No one is a unicorn. You are all replaceable. As she fired me in front of everyone, including our $400 million buyers, Maxwell Thompson, closed his binder, stood up, and asked if I had a moment to talk. Her face went white. Before I continue this story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever dealt with a toxic boss who got what they deserved. The journey that led to my public humiliation and eventual vindication began long before that fateful all-hands meeting. After graduating from Stanford with a double major in computer science and business administration, I spent 5 years climbing the corporate ladder at 2 major tech firms in Silicon Valley. While the experience was valuable, I always felt like a small cog in a massive machine. I wanted to build something meaningful from the ground up. That opportunity arrived when my former classmate Nathan Hayes reached out about his startup StartPoint Technologies. He had secured initial seed funding for a platform that would revolutionize how businesses manage their customer experiences through artificial intelligence. Nathan needed someone who understood both the technical aspects and the business implications to lead product development. I need someone I can trust, Nathan told me over coffee at a small cafe in Palo Alto. Someone who shares the vision and has the skills to execute it. That person is you, Bella. The offer was a significant pay cut from my cushy corporate job, but the equity package and the chance to build something from scratch was too tempting to resist. I joined StartPoint as the Chief Product Officer and one of the first 5 employees. Those early days were magical. We worked out of a converted warehouse in South San Francisco, the 5 of us huddled around secondhand desks fueled by passion and caffeine. Our team consisted of Nathan as CEO, myself as CPO Samantha Johnson, as our brilliant lead engineer William Parker, handling business development, and Lily Anderson managing our operations. The culture was everything I had dreamed of in a startup. We collaborated openly, celebrated small victories with cheap champagne, worked through challenges together, and supported each other through the inevitable setbacks. Nathan was an inspiring leader who trusted his team and gave us the autonomy to excel in our respective domains. My first major contribution was refining our product vision. While Nathan had the initial idea, I helped shape it into something truly innovative. I spent weeks interviewing potential customers, understanding their pain points, and designing solutions that would address real problems, rather than creating flashy features no one needed. Our first product launch exceeded all expectations. We signed 10 clients in the first month, all willing to take a chance on our scrappy little startup because they believed in our vision and were impressed by our execution. The positive feedback validated all those late nights and sacrifices. As word spread about our platform, we began attracting serious attention from investors. Our Series A funding round brought in $12 million, allowing us to expand our team and move to proper offices in downtown San Francisco. By our 3rd year, we had grown to 50 employees, secured Series B funding of $30 million, and our customer base had expanded to over 100 businesses ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies. The success felt earned. Every member of our team had poured their heart and soul into building something special. Our product was making a real difference for our clients. Our culture remained supportive despite the growth, and our future looked brighter than ever. That was when the investors who led our Series B suggested bringing in experienced leadership to help us scale. Nathan was initially resistant, but eventually agreed that adding seasoned executives could help us navigate our rapid growth. Enter Victoria Palmer. Victoria joined StartPoint as our new Chief Operating Officer 2 years after I had joined. Her resume was undeniably impressive. Harvard MBA, successful exits from 2 previous startups, and experience at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. She arrived with a sleek designer wardrobe, a perfectionist demeanor, and what I would later recognize as a dangerous ambition. Our first meeting seemed promising. Victoria was polished and professional, asking insightful questions about our operations and growth strategy. She complimented the foundation we had built and spoke about taking StartPoint to the next level. I left that meeting feeling cautiously optimistic about working with her. There were subtle warning signs from the beginning that I chose to ignore. The way she spoke about our existing team with slight condescension, referring to our quaint office culture. Her insistence on private meetings with Nathan rather than joining our usual leadership discussions. The calculated way she assessed everyone as if determining their usefulness to her personal agenda. She just has a different style, Nathan assured me when I expressed my initial concerns. Give her time to adjust to our culture. Her experience will be invaluable as we scale. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that Victoria Palmer would become a valuable addition to our team, that her expertise would complement our passion, and that together we would take StartPoint to new heights. How wrong I was. Victoria wasted no time in asserting her authority. Within her first month, she had restructured our reporting lines, placing herself as the funnel between most department heads and Nathan. While the official explanation was to free up the CEO to focus on vision and strategy, the practical effect was to position Victoria as the de facto leader of day-to-day operations. What began as subtle power moves quickly evolved into something more insidious. Victoria implemented new efficiency metrics that prioritized short-term results over sustainable growth. Weekly performance reviews created an atmosphere of constant evaluation and competition. People who had once collaborated freely now guarded their work, jealously afraid of falling short of Victoria's ever-shifting targets. "We need to operate like a real company now, not a hobby project," became her favorite phrase whenever anyone questioned these changes. My product team felt the pressure most acutely. Victoria began inserting herself into our planning sessions, demanding features that would impress investors but added little value for users. When I pushed back with data and user research, she would smile tightly and say, "That is an interesting perspective, Isabella. I will take it under advisement. The features would appear on our roadmap anyway." The first time Victoria took credit for my work happened 6 months after her arrival. I had developed a new approach to our AI recommendation engine that significantly improved conversion rates for our clients. After presenting my findings to Victoria, in what I thought was a collaborative meeting, I was shocked to see her present the exact same concept to our board a week later, without any mention of my contribution. When I confronted her privately afterward, her response chilled me. "Isabella, this is how business works at this level. Individual credit is not important for the company's success. We need to present a unified front to our investors." She placed her hand on my shoulder. "Besides, you are already known for your technical skills. I am helping you by highlighting your strategic thinking." The gaslighting only intensified from there. Victoria began excluding me from meetings that directly involved my department. Information would be withheld until the last minute, setting my team up for failure. She would make commitments to clients regarding product features without consulting me, then express disappointment when we struggled to deliver on her impossible promises. Most concerning was Victoria's growing influence over Nathan. My once approachable friend and collaborator became increasingly distant. Meetings with Nathan now required going through Victoria first. He began parroting her corporate jargon and seemed to have adopted her perspective on our company's direction. When I finally managed to get Nathan alone for lunch, I expressed my concerns directly. "Nathan, the culture we built is eroding. People are afraid to take risks or collaborate. Everything is about short-term metrics now, rather than building something sustainable." He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his napkin. "Growth is painful sometimes, Bella. Victoria has experienced scaling companies that we lack. Some of these changes are necessary if we want to compete at the next level." "But at what cost?" I pressed. "Our best people are getting burned out. 3 senior engineers resigned last month. That has never happened before." "Victoria says turnover is normal during transition periods," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "We will stabilize once everyone adapts to the new expectations." I realized then that I had lost Nathan to Victoria's influence. He was no longer the visionary leader I had joined forces with, but someone who had surrendered his authority and perspective to a newcomer who did not share our original values. The company began to split into factions. Victoria brought in her own people, primarily from her previous companies, who received preferential treatment and promotions. They became known as Victoria's Army among the original employees. These newcomers were competent but cutthroat, focused on pleasing Victoria rather than advancing our mission. Meanwhile, many of the early employees and those loyal to the original culture clustered around me. They would come to my office with concerns, seeking guidance on navigating the increasingly toxic environment. I tried to shield my team as much as possible, fighting for reasonable deadlines and protecting them from Victoria's more outrageous demands. This protective stance made me an even bigger target. Victoria began suggesting in leadership meetings that my department was resistant to necessary change and stuck in startup mentality. She instituted formal performance improvement plans for several of my best team members on dubious grounds, a clear message that no one was safe from her reach. The stress began taking a physical toll. I developed insomnia, grinding my teeth at night as I rehearsed arguments and strategies for the next day's inevitable conflicts. I lost weight. Friends outside work commented on how exhausted I looked, but I refused to abandon my team or the product we had poured so much of ourselves into creating. "Why do you stay?" my friend Sophia Williams, one of our product designers, asked me after a particularly brutal week. "You could get a job anywhere with your experience." "Because StartPoint still matters," I told her. "What we built means something. I cannot just walk away and let her destroy it." What I did not say was that it also felt like a battle for the soul of the company. Someone needed to stand against Victoria's toxic leadership to show that her approach was not the only path to success. I still believed that if I could just endure long enough, others would see what was happening and things would change. Then came the acquisition talks, and with them both my greatest challenge and unexpected opportunity. The email announcing Apex Innovations' interest in acquiring StartPoint landed in my inbox on a Wednesday morning. Apex was a major player in enterprise software, with a portfolio of solutions that complemented our own. Their interest validated everything we had built, but also introduced a new dynamic to our already complicated workplace politics. Nathan called an executive meeting to discuss the opportunity. The initial valuation Apex suggested was around $400 million, a figure that made my heart race. For a company our size and stage, it was an exceptional offer, reflecting the true value of what we had created. "This is an extraordinary opportunity," Nathan announced, looking more energized than I had seen him in months. "Apex wants to acquire us not just for our technology, but to have our team join their enterprise division." Victoria sat beside Nathan, her expression carefully neutral, but I could sense her calculating mind working overtime. An acquisition of this magnitude would mean enormous payouts for executives with our equity stakes. It would also mean a restructuring of leadership with no guarantees about who would remain important in the new organization. "We need a deal team to handle negotiations and due diligence," Victoria said smoothly. "I suggest a small, focused group to maintain confidentiality. Nathan and I should lead with targeted involvement from department heads, as needed for specific areas of expertise." I spoke up immediately. "Since our product is the primary value driver for this acquisition, I should be involved in all substantive discussions. Apex will have detailed technical questions that only my team can answer properly." Victoria's smile did not reach her eyes. "Of course you will be consulted on technical matters, Isabella. But acquisition negotiations require a delicate touch and experience with this type of corporate transaction. Nathan and I both have that background." What she did not say, but what everyone understood, was that she was positioning herself as indispensable to the deal while minimizing my role. Despite Victoria's attempts to sideline me, the reality of the situation demanded my involvement. Apex sent their team for initial discussions the following week, and among them was Maxwell Thompson, their chief strategy officer. Maxwell was responsible for evaluating whether our technology and team would integrate successfully with Apex's existing business. Our first meeting with the Apex team took place in our boardroom. Victoria dominated the conversation, speaking broadly about market opportunities and synergies. When specific questions about our technology arose, she deferred to me with barely concealed reluctance. I had prepared extensively, anticipating the technical deep dive. For 2 hours, I walked Maxwell and his team through our architecture, AI capabilities, and product roadmap. I was honest about both our strengths and the challenges we were working to overcome. Rather than the glossy sales pitch Victoria had prepared, I gave them the substantive information they needed to properly evaluate our technology. After the meeting, Maxwell approached me directly. "Isabella, I appreciate your candor and depth of knowledge. Would it be possible to schedule some follow-up sessions focused specifically on your product vision and technical roadmap?" Before I could answer, Victoria inserted herself between us. "All meetings should be coordinated through me as the deal lead. I will find time in Isabella's schedule for any necessary follow-ups." Maxwell looked at her, then back at me, a flicker of curiosity in his expression. "Of course, but I would like these sessions to be detailed technical discussions without the broader business context. Just the product and engineering teams." Those follow-up meetings became my lifeline in the increasingly stressful acquisition process. Away from Victoria's controlling presence, I could speak freely with Maxwell and his technical team about our product's true capabilities and potential. Maxwell turned out to be not just business savvy but technically knowledgeable, asking insightful questions that demonstrated genuine interest in what we had built. "Your platform is the main reason Apex is interested in this acquisition," Maxwell confided during one of our sessions. "The technical innovation here is years ahead of what we have seen elsewhere in the market." A mutual respect developed between us. I found Maxwell to be thoughtful and strategic, focused on building something meaningful rather than just financial outcomes. He reminded me of Nathan in the early days before Victoria's influence had changed him. Meanwhile, Victoria grew increasingly hostile as my relationship with the Apex team strengthened. She began scheduling competing meetings during my sessions, with Maxwell forcing me to reschedule. Critical information about the deal progress would reach me late, or not at all. Twice, I discovered that presentations I had prepared for Apex had been modified by Victoria before delivery, removing key technical details and overstating certain capabilities. The situation came to a head when Apex requested a comprehensive product demonstration for their senior leadership, including their CEO, Jonathan Wright. This was a critical moment in the acquisition process, a chance to showcase exactly why our technology was worth $400 million. I spent weeks preparing with my team, ensuring that every aspect of our platform shone. We created custom demonstrations highlighting how our technology could integrate with Apex's existing products to create new value for their enterprise customers. The day of the demonstration, Victoria pulled me aside, just before the Apex team arrived. "I will handle the strategic overview and business case," she instructed. "You stick to the technical demonstration, only 15 minutes maximum. Do not deviate from the script we discussed." "The script leaves out our most innovative features," I protested, "and 15 minutes is not enough to properly showcase what makes our technology unique." "This is not up for debate," Victoria said sharply. "Follow the plan or do not participate at all." I made a split-second decision that would later prove pivotal. I nodded in apparent agreement, but during the demonstration, I delivered the comprehensive presentation my team had prepared. I showed not just our current capabilities, but our vision for the future, including projects in our research pipeline that would transform how AI could serve enterprise customers. The Apex leadership was visibly impressed. Jonathan Wright, their typically reserved CEO, asked detailed follow-up questions that indicated genuine excitement about the possibilities. Maxwell caught my eye across the table, giving me a subtle nod of approval. Victoria was livid. The moment the Apex team left, she cornered me in the boardroom. "You deliberately undermined my authority," she hissed, her composure finally cracking. "You were instructed to keep it brief and stick to current features only." "I showed them the true value of what we have built," I replied, standing my ground. "That is my job as Chief Product Officer." "Your job is to follow direction," she snapped. "This acquisition is too important to be jeopardized by your ego. From now on, you will not meet with Apex without me present." Despite Victoria's attempts to freeze me out, it was too late. The Apex team had seen our true potential, and they wanted more direct interaction with the product team, not less. Maxwell began specifically requesting my presence at meetings, making it impossible for Victoria to exclude me entirely without raising red flags. As the due diligence process intensified, I noticed Victoria becoming increasingly nervous. She began working late into the night, having hushed phone conversations and snapping at anyone who asked detailed questions about the deal structure. Something did not add up, but with the acquisition moving toward its final stages, I focused on ensuring my team was prepared for the transition. What I did not realize was that Victoria was setting the stage for my elimination, preparing to ensure that she alone would control StartPoint's relationship with Apex moving forward. I was about to face the most humiliating moment of my professional career, but also discover an unexpected path to justice. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon, ostensibly to provide the entire company with an update on the acquisition process. The calendar invitation came directly from Victoria's assistant, marked as mandatory for all employees. What struck me as unusual was the attendance list included the Apex executive team, including Maxwell Thompson and their CEO, Jonathan Wright. "Why would Apex attend an internal update meeting?" I asked Nathan when I passed him in the hallway that morning. He looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. Victoria thought it would be good for morale to have them show their commitment to the acquisition. Nothing to worry about. Something in his evasive manner set off alarm bells, but I had no concrete reason for concern. Still, I spent extra time on my appearance that morning, choosing a professional navy blue suit and taking care with my makeup and hair. Whatever happened, I wanted to project confidence and competence. The large conference room was packed by the time I arrived. Our entire team of now 120 employees filled every available seat and stood along the walls. The Apex executives sat in the front row with Maxwell Thompson directly in my line of sight. I nodded to him as I took my place with the other StartPoint executives at the side of the stage. Victoria strode to the podium, wearing a crisp white suit that somehow made everyone else look underdressed. Her smile was dazzling but did not reach her eyes as she tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for joining this important company update," she began. "As you know, we are in the final stages of our acquisition by Apex Innovations, a transformative moment for StartPoint. Today I want to talk about the road ahead and the changes necessary to ensure a smooth transition." She spoke for several minutes about the acquisition process, emphasizing her own role in securing the deal while barely mentioning the product that had made StartPoint valuable in the first place. I noticed several of my team members exchanging glances, clearly noting the omission. Transitions of this magnitude require difficult decisions. Victoria continued, her tone shifting. "In preparation for our integration with Apex, we have been evaluating our leadership structure to ensure optimal alignment with our new parent company." My stomach tightened. This had not been discussed in any executive meeting I had attended. Effective organizational design sometimes means making changes to even the most senior positions. Victoria said, her gaze now fixed directly on me. "It is with this in mind that I must announce a significant leadership change effective immediately." The room went completely silent. I could feel every eye turned toward me, including those of the Apex executives in the front row. Isabella Hayes will be leaving her position as Chief Product Officer today. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. I felt the blood drain from my face, but forced myself to maintain a neutral expression. Victoria continued without pause, her voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. "While Isabella has contributed to StartPoint's early growth, the acquisition requires leadership with enterprise-scale experience and a strategic mindset aligned with Apex's market approach." Each word was carefully chosen to diminish my contributions while making my termination seem like a rational business decision. But Victoria was not finished with her public execution. "I want to take this moment to address a broader point about professional growth and expectations," she said, her voice taking on a lecturing tone. "In the technology industry, we sometimes develop an inflated sense of our individual importance. Let me be clear, no one is a unicorn. You are all replaceable. What matters is the company's mission and strategic direction, not any single person's vision or preferences. The cruelty of firing me publicly was bad enough. The additional humiliation of framing it as a lesson to others was breathtaking in its callousness." I caught sight of Sophia, my loyal product designer, her face a mask of shock and outrage. Beside her, Daniel Martinez, one of our senior engineers, looked physically ill. I forced myself to breathe evenly, keeping my expression composed through sheer willpower. I would not give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing me break down. 5 years of building this company, pouring my heart and soul into our product, only to be discarded like an obsolete piece of equipment. Isabella's responsibilities will be distributed among the remaining leadership team until a permanent replacement is identified post-acquisition, Victoria concluded. Please join me in thanking Isabella for her service and wishing her well in her future endeavors. The smattering of confused, reluctant applause that followed was possibly the most humiliating sound I had ever heard. Victoria extended her hand toward me clearly, expecting me to walk up to the podium for an awkward handshake that would signal my acceptance of this public dismissal. I hesitated, my mind racing through options. Making a scene would only validate Victoria's decision in the eyes of those who did not know the full story. Walking out might preserve some dignity, but would concede the narrative entirely to Victoria. Before I could decide, movement in the front row caught my attention. Maxwell Thompson closed the binder in front of him with a decisive snap. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and in a clear voice that carried throughout the now silent room said, "Isabella, do you have a moment to talk? Privately." Victoria's face went white. The carefully orchestrated performance was suddenly derailed by the very audience it was meant to impress. Maxwell's request made it clear that Apex's representative did not support or expect this development. Of course we can discuss transition details later," Victoria stammered, trying to regain control of the situation. But we should complete the announcement first. Maxwell turned to face her directly. I believe the announcement is complete. Victoria. Isabella, shall we use the small conference room? I nodded, somehow finding my voice. That would be fine, thank you. As I followed Maxwell out of the room, I could feel Victoria's glare burning into my back. The tension in the room was palpable, with employees and executives alike trying to process what they had just witnessed. Nathan looked shell-shocked, his authority as CEO completely undermined by Victoria's unilateral action and Maxwell's intervention. Just before the door closed behind us, I heard Jonathan Wright, Apex's CEO, clear his throat and say to Victoria, "Perhaps we should continue this discussion with your board members present." In that moment, I realized that Victoria's carefully constructed power play had just spectacularly backfired. I had no idea what Maxwell wanted to discuss, but one thing was certain: this very public firing was not the end of my story with StartPoint, but rather the beginning of an unexpected new chapter. The small conference room felt like a sanctuary after the public humiliation I had just endured. Maxwell closed the door behind us and gestured for me to take a seat. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I was still processing the shock, trying to maintain my professional composure while my career seemingly imploded. That was completely unexpected, Maxwell finally said, his tone measured, but with an undercurrent of disapproval. I hope you know that Apex had no prior knowledge of Victoria's decision. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I appreciate you saying that. It was unexpected for me as well. Maxwell studied me for a moment, then made a decision. Isabella, I am going to be direct with you, because time is of the essence. Victoria Palmer has significantly misrepresented several aspects of StartPoint's operations to our due diligence team. This revelation, coming on the heels of my public firing, should have been shocking. Instead, it felt like confirmation of suspicions I had harbored for months. What specifically has she misrepresented? I asked. Product development timelines, customer satisfaction metrics, and most concerning, the attribution of key innovations. Maxwell leaned forward. During our technical reviews, it became apparent that many of the advances Victoria claimed credit for implementing were actually developed by your team under your leadership. My mind raced through the implications. The acquisition is now in question, Maxwell finished. Your firing today raises serious concerns about leadership continuity for the very product that makes StartPoint valuable to us. He opened his binder and slid a document across the table. This is the technical evaluation our team compiled after the product demonstrations and architecture reviews. You will notice that your name appears repeatedly as the key visionary and architect of StartPoint's core technology. Scanning the document, I saw detailed notes about my contributions with specific reference to innovations that Victoria had claimed as strategic initiatives from her office. Isabella, I will be blunt, Maxwell continued. You are a significant factor in Apex's interest in StartPoint. Your product vision and technical leadership were key components of our valuation model. Victoria's attempt to remove you from the equation at this stage suggests either a serious misunderstanding of what we value in this acquisition, or worse, a deliberate attempt to consolidate control, regardless of the impact on the company's value. The realization that Victoria had fundamentally misunderstood or deliberately sabotaged what made StartPoint valuable was stunning. In her ruthless pursuit of power, she had potentially jeopardized the very deal she was so desperate to control. What happens now? I asked, trying to process this dramatic shift in circumstances. Maxwell straightened his tie, a gesture I had come to recognize as his preparation for a significant statement. That depends partly on you. Apex is reconsidering the terms of the acquisition in light of today's events. We need to understand the full extent of any misrepresentations before proceeding. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. We would like to engage you as a consultant to help us evaluate the true state of StartPoint's technology and product roadmap, independent of Victoria's narrative. This would be a separate arrangement from your employment with StartPoint, which technically has just been terminated. The irony was almost too perfect. Victoria had fired me to eliminate what she saw as competition for control, only to potentially hand me a position of significant influence over the acquisition she coveted. I would need complete access to documentation and code repositories. I said, my mind already shifting to practical considerations, and the ability to speak freely with the engineering and product teams. We can arrange that through our due diligence rights, Maxwell assured me. We will need to move quickly, though. I suspect Victoria will attempt damage control as soon as this meeting concludes. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Victoria is in full panic mode. Nathan finally grew a spine and is questioning her decision. What is happening with Maxwell? I looked up at Maxwell, a new sense of resolve, replacing the shock and humiliation of minutes earlier. I will help Apex understand exactly what they are potentially acquiring, good and bad. Complete transparency is the only way forward. Maxwell nodded satisfaction, evident in his expression. That is exactly what we need. I will have our legal team draft a consulting agreement immediately. He stood and extended his hand. For what it is worth, Isabella, I think Victoria just made the biggest mistake of her career. As we shook hands, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The past months of toxic leadership, gaslighting, and undermining had taken a tremendous toll. Now, paradoxically, Victoria's most aggressive move had created an opportunity for truth to emerge. I should collect my personal belongings, I said, gathering my composure for what would undoubtedly be an awkward return to my office. Take your time, Maxwell replied. I need to speak with Jonathan about next steps. We will be in touch this afternoon with the consulting paperwork. Returning to the main conference room, I found it largely empty with small groups of employees huddled in intense conversation. Nathan and Victoria were nowhere to be seen, presumably having moved their inevitable confrontation behind closed doors. The remaining Apex executives were speaking with our board chairman, Elizabeth Carter, their expressions grave. I walked to my office with my head held high, aware of sympathetic and confused glances from colleagues. News traveled fast in our open office environment, and the dramatic exit with Maxwell had clearly fueled speculation. My office door was ajar, and inside I found Sophia waiting, her expression a mix of outrage and concern. What the hell just happened? She demanded the moment I closed the door. First Victoria publicly executes you, then Apex's CSO whisks you away, and now there is a closed-door meeting with the board and executives. I began gathering my personal items, considering how much to share. Sophia had been loyal throughout Victoria's reign of terror, and I trusted her completely. Victoria miscalculated, I said simply. She thought removing me would consolidate her control over the acquisition. Instead, she may have jeopardized the entire deal. Sophia's eyes widened. So Maxwell pulling you aside was damage control, I confirmed. Apex values the product and team more than Victoria realized. They are reconsidering the acquisition terms, and I will be consulting with them directly to evaluate StartPoint's true value proposition. A slow smile spread across Sophia's face. Oh my God. She literally handed you the perfect revenge opportunity on a silver platter. This is not about revenge, I corrected her, though I could not entirely suppress a smile. It is about truth and accountability. Victoria has been misrepresenting our product capabilities and taking credit for innovations she had nothing to do with. That ends now. As I packed the last of my personal items into a box, my phone buzzed with messages from team members expressing shock and support. Daniel had texted, "Whatever happens next, the product team stands with you. Just say the word." The loyalty touched me deeply. Despite Victoria's attempts to isolate me, the connections I had built with my team remained strong. Those relationships based on mutual respect and shared commitment to our product were something Victoria had never understood or valued. Sophia helped me carry my belongings to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of the office that had been my second home for 5 years. Rather than sadness or anger, I felt a surprising sense of liberation. For the first time in 2 years, I would be free of Victoria's toxic presence, able to speak the truth without fear of retaliation. "What will you do now?" Sophia asked as we reached the lobby. I thought about Maxwell's offer and the opportunity it presented, not just for professional redemption, but for ensuring that the product we had poured ourselves into would be properly valued and understood. "I am going to make sure that the truth comes to light," I told her, one way or another. As I stepped out of the StartPoint building into the bright afternoon sunlight, I realized that what had begun as the worst day of my professional life might actually be the beginning of something much more powerful, the chance to reclaim my narrative and ensure that toxic leadership did not go unchallenged. My phone buzzed again with an email notification. It was from Maxwell with the subject line, "Consulting Agreement and Next Steps." The timing could not have been more perfect. Victoria had wanted to make an example of me, to show that everyone was replaceable. Instead, she had unwittingly set the stage for her own undoing. The real work was just beginning. The week following my public firing passed in a blur of activity. I signed the consulting agreement with Apex within hours of leaving StartPoint, granting me a generous daily rate, and more importantly, legitimate access to all company documents and systems as part of Apex's due diligence process. I converted my dining room into a makeshift office covering the walls with whiteboard material to map out StartPoint's true technological architecture and organizational dynamics. This was not just about my personal vindication. It was about ensuring that the company I had helped build was properly understood and valued. The first revelation came from Daniel, who risked his position to share internal communications that had been hidden from me. Victoria had created a shadow roadmap for Apex, promising delivery timelines that the engineering team had repeatedly warned were impossible. She had dismissed these concerns internally, while presenting the accelerated timeline as confirmed to Apex. She told us we were not being ambitious enough, Daniel explained, during our confidential meeting at a cafe 3 blocks from the StartPoint office. When the senior engineers pushed back with specific technical limitations, she accused them of having a fixed mindset and threatened performance reviews. I carefully documented these discrepancies, creating a spreadsheet that compared Victoria's promises to Apex with the realistic assessments from the engineering team. The gap was shocking, with some features promised 6 to 8 months before they could possibly be delivered. Sophia contributed additional intelligence from the product side. Victoria has been systematically taking credit for product innovations that came from your team, she confirmed, sliding a folder across the table during our dinner meeting. I compiled screenshots of the original product specifications you created, alongside her presentations to Apex, where she claims them as her strategic initiatives. The pattern was undeniable. Victoria had constructed an elaborate fiction about her contributions to StartPoint's success, one that would have eventually collapsed under scrutiny, but not before she secured her position in the post-acquisition organization. Maxwell arranged daily briefings where I shared my findings with Apex's due diligence team. Initially skeptical, they became increasingly concerned as the evidence mounted. These misrepresentations go beyond typical corporate optimism, observed Jonathan Wright during one such meeting. This appears to be a deliberate attempt to inflate Victoria's contributions while concealing significant challenges. By the end of the week, I had compiled a comprehensive report documenting 3 key areas of concern. First, the product roadmap timeline had been falsified with delivery dates that were technically impossible given the current state of development. Second, Victoria had claimed personal credit for key innovations that predated her arrival at StartPoint or were developed by my team without her input. Third, and most damaging, she had concealed significant technical debt in the platform, pushing engineers to implement temporary fixes that would require substantial rework after the acquisition closed. This last point concerns me most, I explained to Maxwell and Jonathan. The technical debt Victoria has accumulated would require at least 6 months of dedicated engineering time to address properly. It is not reflected anywhere in the materials provided to Apex. Maxwell nodded grimly. This explains the discrepancies our technical team identified but could not pinpoint. Victoria provided plausible explanations for each individual concern, but the pattern is now clear. What made my position uniquely powerful was that I never had to resort to personal attacks or unprofessional behavior. The facts spoke for themselves. I maintained rigorous documentation, supported each claim with evidence, and framed everything in terms of ensuring Apex had accurate information for their investment decision. Meanwhile, the situation at StartPoint was deteriorating rapidly. My former colleagues reported that Victoria was becoming increasingly erratic, calling emergency meetings at odd hours and issuing contradictory directives. Nathan had finally begun questioning her decisions, but the damage to his credibility as CEO was severe. On day 9 of my consulting engagement, Sophia texted me, "Board called emergency meeting. Elizabeth Carter, requesting all executive communication about acquisition." Victoria locked in office with legal counsel. The board's involvement signaled a significant escalation. Elizabeth Carter, our most experienced board member, had initially supported Victoria's appointment, but had grown increasingly concerned about her leadership style. Now, with the acquisition potentially in jeopardy, the board was asserting its fiduciary responsibility. That afternoon, I received a call from Elizabeth herself, something that would have been unthinkable 2 weeks earlier. "Isabella, I will be direct," she began without preamble. "Apex has shared your due diligence findings with the board. The discrepancies are deeply troubling. We need your perspective on whether these issues can be remediated and how. I had prepared for this moment, carefully considering what would serve StartPoint's long-term interests rather than my personal desire for vindication. The technical issues are fixable with proper leadership and transparent communication, I explained. The product is fundamentally sound, and the team is exceptionally talented. What cannot be easily remedied is the culture of fear and misrepresentation that has taken root under Victoria's leadership. There was a long pause before Elizabeth responded. I understand. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss leadership changes as a condition for keeping the acquisition on track. Would you be willing to join that discussion? The irony was almost poetic. Less than 2 weeks after being publicly fired, I was being invited to advise the board on the company's future leadership. I am available, I said simply. The next day, I presented my findings to the full board in a 2-hour session that Maxwell later described as the most professional execution I have ever witnessed. I laid out the facts without emotion, acknowledged the challenges facing the company, and offered a clear path forward that prioritized transparency and rebuilding trust with both employees and Apex. Victoria was given an opportunity to respond, but her explanations rang hollow against the weight of evidence. When she attempted to blame engineering teams for the timeline discrepancies, Daniel and 2 other senior engineers contradicted her claims with documented proof of their warnings. The board deliberated for less than an hour before reaching their decision. Victoria would be removed as COO immediately. Nathan would remain as CEO but with enhanced board oversight. And most significantly, Apex would proceed with the acquisition, but at a reduced valuation of $320 million, with an earnout structure tied to delivery of the actual product roadmap. When the news was announced to the company the following day, the relief among employees was palpable. Victoria was escorted from the building by security, a final humiliation that mirrored what she had tried to inflict on me. Nathan called me that evening, his voice heavy with regret. I should have listened to you sooner, Bella. I let her isolate me from what was really happening. The company almost paid the price for my weakness. We all make mistakes, Nathan, I said, finding forgiveness easier than I had expected. The question is, what we learn from them. The board wants you back, he said hesitantly, as Chief Product Officer with expanded authority. We need you to help rebuild what Victoria damaged. I had anticipated this offer and had already made my decision. The experience had transformed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. Going back to StartPoint, even in a position of greater influence, would mean stepping back into a chapter I had already completed. I appreciate the offer, Nathan, but my answer is no. StartPoint will always be special to me, but it is time for me to build something new on my own terms. As I ended the call, I looked at the consulting offers that had flooded my inbox since news of the leadership shakeup broke. Victoria had tried to brand me as replaceable, but the market was sending a very different message. My expertise and integrity were valuable commodities, ones that would allow me to chart my own course moving forward. The acquisition closed 3 weeks later. Maxwell invited me to the signing ceremony, a gesture that acknowledged my role in salvaging the deal. As I watched Nathan and Jonathan shake hands, I felt not triumph or vindication, but a quiet satisfaction. The company we had built would continue to grow, the product would reach its full potential, and the toxic leadership that had nearly destroyed both had been removed. Victoria's parting shot had been intended as my professional execution. Instead, it had become the catalyst for her own downfall and my unexpected liberation. Sometimes, as I was learning, rock bottom becomes a solid foundation on which to build something better. 6 months after that fateful all-hands meeting, I found myself sitting in a sleek downtown office with my name on the door. Not as an employee, but as the founder of Hayes Consulting, specializing in product strategy and healthy organizational culture for growing tech companies. My calendar was filled with clients who valued both my technical expertise and my hard-won wisdom about leadership dynamics. The final resolution of the StartPoint saga had unfolded better than I could have imagined. The restructured acquisition went through with Apex installing new leadership that respected the original culture while bringing needed enterprise discipline. Many of my former team members received promotions in the new organization, their talents finally recognized and rewarded appropriately. Victoria Palmer, meanwhile, had become something of a cautionary tale in Silicon Valley circles. After her abrupt departure from StartPoint, she struggled to secure another executive position as word of her leadership style spread through industry networks. Last I heard, she had taken a step back to a director-level role at a smaller company, perhaps learning some humility along the way. Nathan reached out occasionally, our friendship slowly rebuilding on more equal footing. He had learned painful lessons about the importance of staying connected to the heart of the company rather than becoming isolated in the executive bubble. The new COO actually asks for feedback, he told me during our most recent lunch. Real feedback, not just validation. It is a completely different dynamic. Perhaps the most meaningful outcome was my ongoing relationship with Apex. Maxwell had been impressed enough with my consulting work to engage me for several other projects, leading to a retainer arrangement that provided both financial security and intellectually stimulating challenges. You have a unique perspective that bridges technical depth and leadership wisdom, he explained when proposing the arrangement. That combination is rare and valuable. One Tuesday afternoon, as I wrapped up a client call, my assistant informed me that Sophia was waiting in the reception area. I had hired her away from StartPoint 2 months earlier, unable to resist the opportunity to work with one of the few people who had stood by me throughout the ordeal. The Parker proposal is ready for your review, she announced, dropping a folder on my desk before settling into the chair across from me. Also, Elizabeth Carter called again about joining the board of her new venture. I smiled at the irony. The same board member who had once rubber-stamped Victoria's decisions now sought my guidance for her startup. Life had a way of coming full circle. Tell her I will consider it after I complete the current project load, I replied. No rush. Sophia nodded, then fixed me with a knowing look. Today is the anniversary, you know. 1 year since the public firing that changed everything. I had not realized the date, but she was right. Exactly 1 year had passed since that humiliating moment that had ultimately led to unexpected opportunities and growth. We should celebrate, I decided impulsively. Cancel my last meeting and make a reservation somewhere nice. Invite Daniel and the others who stood by us. Later that evening, surrounded by friends who had become something like family, I found myself reflecting on the journey. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and occasional references to the Victoria era that now seemed almost like a shared war story, the pain transmuted into wisdom and camaraderie. During a lull in the conversation, Daniel raised his glass. To Isabella, who showed us all how to face down toxic leadership with grace and integrity. As glasses clinked around the table, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. What had seemed like professional devastation had ultimately forced me to find strength I did not know I possessed, and create a path more aligned with my values than I might have otherwise chosen. I want to share something I have been thinking about, I said as the toast concluded. This past year taught me lessons I never expected to learn, and I am actually grateful for the experience, as painful as it was at the time. The table quieted, my friends leaning in to listen. I learned that our professional worth is not determined by any single person's assessment, especially someone operating from insecurity and fear. I learned that integrity eventually surfaces truth, even when power seems stacked against it. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes what feels like our worst moment can actually be the beginning of our best chapter. Sophia squeezed my hand. You also taught all of us something important. You showed that it is possible to stand up to toxic behavior without becoming toxic yourself. That observation struck me as particularly meaningful. Throughout the ordeal, I had been tempted many times to resort to Victoria's tactics to fight fire with fire. The fact that I had maintained my professional integrity, focusing on facts rather than personal attacks, had ultimately given me more credibility and power than any vindictive strategy could have provided. As dinner concluded, and we prepared to go our separate ways, Maxwell Thompson called his name, lighting up my phone screen. I hope I am not interrupting anything important, he began. Just celebrating the anniversary of my professional execution, I replied lightly. What can I do for you? There was a pause before he chuckled. Appropriate timing, then. I am calling because Apex is launching a new innovation division focused on exactly the kind of AI applications you pioneered at StartPoint. We are looking for someone to lead it. Not as a consultant, but as a division president with full autonomy and resources. The offer was tempting, representing exactly the kind of role I had once dreamed of. 6 months earlier, I might have accepted immediately. Now I found myself hesitating. It is an incredible opportunity, Maxwell. Let me think about it and get back to you. As I rejoined my friends, I realized that the greatest gift of the past year had been the freedom to make choices based on what truly fulfilled me rather than external definitions of success. Victoria had fired me because she saw me as a threat to her power. In doing so, she had inadvertently freed me to discover my own. Would I take the apex position? Perhaps. Or maybe I would continue building my consulting practice, helping other companies avoid the toxic leadership traps that had nearly destroyed StartPoint. The beauty was that either choice would be made from a position of strength and self-knowledge, not fear or obligation. As we walked out into the cool evening air, Sophia linked her arm through mine. Whatever you decide about Maxwell's offer, you have already won. You know that, right? I nodded, looking up at the stars, visible despite the city lights. The real victory was never about destroying Victoria or vindicating myself. It was about discovering that being fired publicly was not the end of my story, but merely a plot twist in a much larger narrative. That night, as I reflected on the journey of the past year, I realized that Victoria's cruel words had proven prophetic, though not in the way she intended. No one truly is a unicorn. We are all replaceable in organizational charts and company directories, but that very replaceability is what gives us the freedom to define ourselves beyond any single role or relationship. Victoria had tried to use that truth as a weapon. I had transformed it into liberation. Have you ever experienced toxic leadership that backfired? How did you handle a situation where someone tried to diminish your value, only to end up highlighting it instead? Drop a comment below to share your story. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more tales of professional resilience and growth. Remember, sometimes what seems like your worst professional moment can become the catalyst for your greatest success. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the strength to stand in your truth, even when others try to rewrite your story.